Hi, folks. So here we are, last 3 weeks of this fall of 2020 COVID-19 semester. It's been a crazy semester with all of our schedules and being on Zoom. In the past, when I've run this class, we've done a lot of collaborative activities inside the class. Of course, it's face-to-face and a lot of problem solving, and unfortunately, doing that remotely, doing that online, even with Zoom, just me being on one side of the camera and you being on the other, didn't really seem like it was the most appropriate way to do that. So instead, of course, we've made the best of it, and we've concentrated on some of the technologies that we use for collaboration. Haven't changed the course that too very much as far as the actual content. What has changed is the delivery. And towards the end of the class, every year that I do this class, we sort of take a look at the foundations of collaboration. After talking about the Myers-Briggs personality differences and realizing that people have a different reaction or a different way of doing things just because there is a diversity of how they do things, not a diversity of where they're from or how they've been taught or what they think, but more along the lines of either a social diversity or a biological diversity, some sort of different way of people are talking personality-wise. And again, it's not a hard and fast science. It just happens to be that Myers and Myers-Briggs, I went ahead and said we could go ahead and divvy these different characteristics up into 16 different personality types. And hopefully one of the things that you've noticed when taking a look at how we sort of looked at that is all of the personality tests, if you've taken a peek at any of them, they didn't have any negatives. There may have been some things to look out for. Maybe you could run away with being overly one way or the other. Maybe it would be a weakness, but it definitely was not a negative. There was no negative for any of the personality types. But putting 16 different people in the room, or 16 different types in the room, even though you might agree that we all need to do that one thing, there may be 16 different ways as far as how we do things first, or how we go about doing that thing, even after you agree on what that thing is. So sometimes there's a problem with getting folks to agree on how to do things. And that's all sort of sits down in that area of collaboration, and that's why I wanted to look at NetLogo, the programming language, because with NetLogo, and you're very welcome to continue to take a look at that, and there's definitely some tutorials out there. At the very least, there's tutorials inside the help file of NetLogo. But what NetLogo allows us to do is it allows us to do the polar opposite of Myers-Briggs, and that is to figure out how we can take action as a group of agents, these little turtles. But these little turtles do not have personality differences. In fact, they have a zero diversity of personality traits. And in fact, in addition, they're 100% agreeable as well. They do exactly what they're told. So the actual answer as to how we should collaborate and how we should move forward through innovation lies somewhere in the middle. Either we have a room full of 16 different personalities, or we have a room full of everyone does what they're told and is happy about it. Of course, neither of those things are going to be reality. We have to sort of day by day and situation by situation take a look at that. So one of the things I wanted to look at, and I have been doing this for several years now, is to look at the history of the automobile industry in the last century, so 1900s, or the 1900 through 2000, almost 1999. It just makes a nice book and a nice slice. And there are lots of different retrospectives as far as what was the most important thing to be developed over the past 100 years, well, 120 years now, or what things should be studied. And one of those things is the automobile industry, and most notably how we go about making automobiles or making anything. If not making automobiles, perhaps making the iPhone, the latest version of the iPhone. How do we make enough of those so that we actually can produce them and sell them? And Henry Ford happens to be one of the people that sort of starts that conversation of how do we make a lot of one thing. When Henry Ford started his Ford Motor Company over 100 years ago, it would have been fantastic if he had rows and rows and rooms of robots to choose from to get things done. If everything was net logo for him, because he could just say, hey, build me a car, and go ahead and do it. But obviously we didn't have net logo, and we didn't have rows and rows and rooms of robots 120 years ago, so he had to use people. And in using those people, he literally used them as robots and treated them like robots, and that wasn't a cool thing. So over the past 100 years, we've now have real robots, and we allow the real robots to automate robot jobs, and we use humans to do humans' jobs. So I think this is I enjoy it as a fantastic conversation of how we move from there to here, or from here to there, whatever you want to talk. So what I wanted to have you guys take a look at was a documentary over the Henry Ford situation. It summarizes about 80 years of his life in a quick couple of minutes. But I have a few slides from Prezi that I usually put before we watch that video. And again, my thought is, my premise is that Ford Motor Company is sort of the beginning of, we discovered a lot of collaboration, the act of working with someone to produce or create something. And of course, there's that second group there, traitorous cooperation with an enemy. So here's Henry Ford, 1919, notably just oh, look, that's kind of cool. LaSalle College, which is now LaSalle University, where we're hailing from, was founded in 1863, and that's when Henry Ford was born. So he's not an ancient person. Happens to be as old as LaSalle. He's no longer with us, obviously. Passed away in 1947. But he was born in Michigan. That's where he lived his entire life there, near Dearborn and near Detroit, which of course turned into the motor capital of the world. Why we get Motown music, because it was nicknamed Motortown. This is an older copy, an older screen capture Wikipedia article for Henry Ford. I went to get the latest one, and it didn't have this information, so I'm going to use it anyway. If he was alive today and he was still controlling his investment in Ford, he would be worth $188 billion, which is a pretty huge thing. There's only a couple people who can say that. Most notably, we look at the Google guys and maybe Amazon and maybe SpaceX these days. Multi-billionaires, but Henry Ford did it back in the turn of the 19th century. So yeah, he invented the Ford Motor Company. Pretty awesome. Probably a lot of people realize that the Ford Mustang is probably one of the most iconic. Of course, the Ford Model T is probably the first one. But these days, probably Ford is most notably known for its trucks. Most recently, Ford has stopped producing passenger cars, light duty passenger. They have sports cars, of course, the Ford Mustang, but like the Ford Fiesta and the Ford Taurus, they've gone away because it just doesn't seem to be profitable to do so. But Ford trucks are still outselling a lot of other pickup truck styles, especially now that gasoline is down. As we talk about this in 2020, around $2.40, $2.50 a gallon. It was had a high there of maybe $3 and $4. It was crazy. So the question that Henry Ford set out to do, he didn't sit down and say, "Hey, here's my destiny. I need to build cars." He was sort of following his passion. But I guess the question is, how do you go about designing and building a car? Well, first of all, back in the day, you needed someone who knew how to design and build things, and they used the material that was available, so there really was a lot of wood that went into this car. So I just have a picture of a wood crafter sitting there, just, "What are you making, Bob?" "I'm making a car," just making all the parts out of wood. Of course, we have to move up to not just wood, we have to use steel as well, so either we're going to bang these things out by hand like a blacksmith, or we're going to use a machine. And then on top of that, you just have wood and metal running around. You have to have a nice soft interior where you want to spend some time. So of course we have upholsteries and obviously we had a lot of fabrics that go into it. So there's a lot of not to mention the technology of the controls and the electronics, and well, there's a lot that goes into doing a car. I happened to pick up just another updated this. Most recently, this was October 28th, just a couple of days ago. Ford is still around, and Ford is still doing really, really well, especially with their trucks. So this idea of Henry Ford's, which was started around the turn of the century, around the 1900s, about 1900, is still going strong 120 years later. I sort of chuckled when I noticed that right on this web page that I just grabbed off the web, we happen to have Volvo, a different car company. Volvo is owned by a holding company from China. It's actually Volvo's actually Chinese. It's advertising on the Ford page. So yeah, still a lot of competition inside the automobile industry as well. So yeah, here's the question that Ford set out to decide to answer: how do you design and build a car? But more importantly, how do you design and build lots of cars? And that's what this biography is going to take a look at. So what he suggested was, 1, get a bunch of people. We'll need a lot of people to do this. And 2, build a lot of cars. And that's a great plan. But how you actually go about doing that, and how you go about organizing things, there's a lot of details in the mix. And that's what we're going to take a look at. So he developed something that we covered in, for those of you who are ISBIT majors from way back in ISBIT 111, we were talking about systems thinking. The book that we used there from Jamshid Ghardajaji was talking about the mindless machine model, where we could use people as robots. And he definitely invented that, and he definitely used people as robots. It didn't go too well for the people who were acting as robots. They were paid well, but it didn't go too well for Ford as well. And obviously, we've changed that. We do not. There may be a job these days that you might get hired to be a robot for a little bit, but you're probably going to leave it because working as a robot's not very fun. It depends on how much fortitude you have to hang on there and take care of it. So here's this video we're going to take a look at. It's Henry Ford. It's made by the Bio channel, the biography channel. It was made in 1994, so it's a few years old. But of course, it was 1994, talking about a guy who lived 50 years earlier. So it's not as if they were using any newer video. All the video was archival as well, but it's pretty cool. So we're going to take a look at this. So, if you would have a look at the next couple, I've placed them in some additional Edpuzzles, and we'll take a look at that, and then we'll continue on to other inventors as well, and see how this idea of collaboration has increased over the past 100 years.